Hello friends, it's Lisa and this is the second video in a 2-video extravaganza where I make a bunch of different cards using some scraps. So if you haven't seen the first one, go ahead and check that out or watch this video and then check that other video out. They work really well together, but you don't have to watch them in order. Here is all of the different coloring media that I used. I had them all sitting out from this previous project, which is where all of the scraps of paper that I'm using come from. So I just left all these out and used a lot of them on the cards. The first and really big step that I did was I put everything through my Xyron Create a Sticker machine, which it really just puts adhesive on the back of all these pieces of paper. You do not have to do this step. I just personally find it very helpful. Then if I die cut anything, if I want to just stick it down, I can do that. I don't have to put liquid adhesive or ATG, anything like that. I don't have to worry about it. I just stick the paper to the other paper and it works perfectly. I do cut out the scraps and the carrier sheet is the top sheet, so you just pull that away. Here is the first card, and this is really simple card. So it's from one of the Our Daily Bread stamp sets, this Christmas Verses, and it's so sweet. It's a really sweet Bible verse, Christmas verse, Bible verse, and I decided that just adding that in between the wings on this scrap of paper would be perfect. I personally really loved this scrap. There were so many things I could have done with it, but you'll see I actually keep the top and the bottom with those wings and use them in the other video. You'll see those. So if you're interested in how I use those, even just a tiny little leftover scrap. Now I apologize if you hear any footsteps. My parents are at my house today for Christmas. They are spending a couple days and we're just having a really chill Christmas at my house. So if you hear anybody moving upstairs, that is what it is. Here I'm heat embossing that silver onto this paper. If you've never seen heat embossing, it's super fun. It takes the powder and you melt it and it makes it look really pretty. Then I'm going to take some of this Distress Oxide Salty Ocean ink and I'm just blending over the top so that it gives it a little bit more contrast between the words and the background. But I do want to try and buff off as much as I can of that background. Next, what I'm doing is airbrushing onto my base cardstock the edges. Now I know I'm not going to see much of this cardstock after I stick down the page. So what I'm doing is just doing the edges, because why spend the time or the effort or the product to do the whole thing when you're not going to see it. I also covered the edges with some pearl luster gilding polish, and that just makes the cardstock look pearlescent. So if you wanted to, you could always just fold back rather than cutting, and you'll see that later that I don't always cut off the edges, but for these I wanted to keep the leftovers because I liked those wings so much, and I do use those on other cards. So here is that very simple, very fast card that I thought turned out really cute. This next card, the overall card I wasn't in love with, but I really liked this little scene that I created, so I wanted to include it, even though it wasn't perfect. But really, how much of life is? I'm still going to send it out. Somebody is still going to enjoy it. They're just going to enjoy it after Christmas. But it's not perfect, but that's okay. here I'm stamping onto this watercolor cardstock, and I really should have left it and pushed it a little bit harder because it doesn't do a perfect impression, but it did well enough. So I'm stamping and embossing again, and to emboss, if you've never done that, what you do is you stamp with an embossing ink pad and then pour the powder on top. It'll stick to just that embossed image, and then you heat set it with a heat gun. There are specialty heat guns that you can get that are specifically for this. I went to Lowe's and bought a heat gun, and it works really well, and it was half the price. Since this is a watercolored background, I was able to watercolor over the people and kind of bleach up some of the color. I did then go through and add around the edges that Salty Ocean Distress Oxide to really bump up the contrast between the image and the background. So basically added a shadow. Then I used the Perfect Pearls in Perfect Pearl color and just watercolored with that Perfect Pearl over the top. Next, I decided to use this Come Let Us Adore Him die cut, and I put it onto some vellum and just cut around it so it's in a little square. Next, I use my small Xyron Create sticker, which is great with vellum because you put adhesive over the whole back of it so the adhesive doesn't show. Next, I'm airbrushing again the background with some of the blue, and I know that it's not going to go through the whole card again, so I'm just doing the top and adding that pearl luster gilding polish again. I'm trying to line up, kind of get Jesus and Mary and Joseph in the middle of the card just so it doesn't look wonky. And then I'm going to cut off the edges. Finally, I'm trying to figure out where to add this Come Let Us Adore Him. I think I could have found a better placement or used a different sentiment because I think it would have been better with a different sentiment. But that's the card, and it turned out cute. Here is a very similar card that I think turned out even better. Really, I did not bleach the background out because this part of the paper was so much lighter that really didn't need to bleach it. I also left it down longer just to make sure that I got a really good impression. And I did get a better impression. So, like I said, I didn't bleach this, so I do get that one little splotch of blue, but it's fine. I do dab that up a little bit and then repaint over it. Then what we have is adding the pearl luster to the background cardstock. Again, just not doing the whole cardstock, just doing the parts you're going to see. I guess you could do the whole cardstock, and for some of them I did because I wasn't sure exactly how it was going to look. But for this, I knew I wanted to keep a lot of that torn edge. I really like the look of the torn edge, so that was just something I left in. Next, I'm going to cut off the edges, and for the thin pieces of paper, like when I did jelly printing, I try and use the thinnest copy paper I can find, but it's fine to just fold it over. It looks just the same as if you cut it. If you have thick cardstock, you definitely want to cut it. Like the watercolor cardstock, you do want to cut. So here is the pearl luster, and I'm just putting this on some regular Neenah 80-pound cardstock. The one thing I did not do, or some of them had been through the Xyron machine and some of them had not. This one did. That is an important part. I personally love just being able to peel off the back and stick it down. But you can also use glue And I think I did that in the other video. You'll see I used glue and it works just as well. So here I'm outlining with my Uniball Signo gel pen, and this is in silver. This really just grounds or breaks the sentiment up from the background. So when you read it, you could really read Joy to the World. Just a helpful hint, if you're having trouble reading the sentiment, just go ahead and mark around it. Next we have a little bit more intricate of a card. I kept going on this card. I'm sure you've done that too, where you think of more you can do and then you do it. So for this one, it started out with another part of this watercolor cardstock, and I'm doing this background, which it's the Bethlehem, Bethlehem song, and it has it's supposed to have a little scene of Bethlehem on the bottom, but the large stamping area and the not smooth cardstock did not make for a very good stamp impression, so I did not really get a good stamp impression on the bottom of that bigger stamp. So I'm taking this smaller stamp from a different stamp set and putting it onto that same kind of cardstock, but this is a darker area, and stamping it down. Then I'll put it over the top so that it kind of goes a little town of Bethlehem. But I did airbrush the background pink so that it would be a good contrast between the more blue of the Little Town of Bethlehem song sheet and stamped image from the background, so it would really stand out. Next, I'm going to stick this little boo-boo fixer, might call it, on top, and I'll cut the edges. You'll see it doesn't perfectly cover that background sheet, so I'm going to go ahead and cover it, cut it off so it is lined up, and it will be square now. I really like this Crafter's Companion guillotine cutter. I have a Fiskars rotary cutter paper trimmer, but I really like this guillotine style, so I'm looking for a bigger one that I can cut 12 by 12 paper. So if you know of a really good guillotine 12 by 12 paper cutter, let me know, because I am on the market for one. The rotary cutter is just a pain. I don't like it very much. Anyway, next I took this stencil, and it's the Scroll Work stencil from Crafters Workshop, and I centered it on the stencil, which for the amount of this you see, it probably wasn't that important, but I did center it. And I'm going to take some of this paper texture paste from Prima, which I really like. I really like the texture. I really like the look. I think if they made this paper texture paste with some pearl in it, I would be in heaven. It looks so good. It will pick up a little bit of the pink marker, so it won't be perfectly white. It's either it's not quite opaque, or I think it just soaks in a little bit of that, and so it's not perfectly white when it's all dry, but it looks amazing. Then I'm going to do the Come, O Come All Ye Faithful from some white cardstock that I pearl lustered, and have that. I did have to wait a day before the background was completely dry, so you may see throughout this video that my nail colors change. I spent a long time getting all the pieces of the video in order so that I could show you one card at a time. they did not happen one card at a time. I did a lot of pieces and a lot of different pieces all together, and then went on to the next pieces, and is jumbled 7 hours of video that I cobbled together for you guys. So I hope it makes sense. Next, I'm trying to get this little part out. Sometimes the Gemini Go may not cut all the way through the paper and the backing when it's gone through the Xyron, but it does cut through the paper, which is really all that you need. So I put the "O come all ye faithful," which I thought turned out so cute, and I thought this card really came together. It looked super cute. I did decide to foam adhesive it. Put it on some foam adhesive. So, you can see there I cut out a piece, but I decided if I just stuck it down, I could cut along the edges with my scissors, which is what I did. I used the Tim Holtz Tonic scissors, and I really, really like them. They're awesome. They just cut along the edges, and it worked out perfectly. Then I glued that down with liquid adhesive. Since I was sticking it to the textured background, using liquid adhesive was important. Here are the pictures of all the cards we made today. If you'd like a picture of every single card that I made, then you can go over to my blog along with a list of the colors and all the stamps and stencils I used. For this whole project, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss I have a new video coming up on Christmas Eve as well as on Friday of next week. Thank you guys so much for sticking with me and having a lot of fun today. Here are some other videos you may be interested in. The first one of the series as well. And have a very Merry Christmas. Bye, guys.